The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Hi, this is Bridget Engels, and we are here with Starr Goode We on the Oracle of Luna podcast, where we interview and have conversations with present-day goddesses. Starr Goode We is the producer-moderator of a cable TV series called The Goddess in Art, and she is the author of Sheela Na Gig, The Dark Goddess of Sacred Power. As well as an award-winning writer, she teaches at Santa Monica College. Welcome, Starr.
Thank you, Bridget. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Yeah, I'm really excited. I have been looking at your book and very interested in knowing more about your journey. So let's get started. I'm wondering, how did your interest in goddess art and divine femininity come about? How did it all start?
Well, when I pause and turn back and look at my life, I see a thread running all the way through it. And it starts with my devotion to my mother and my naturally rebellious nature. And although I could not have defined it at the time, as a child, I didn't have the words. I can see now that I've just had this lifelong resistance to misogyny. Last month, I was writing a friend of mine. We've been friends since we were young, and she reminded me that when we were kids, that I started a society called Women's Society of Superiority Over Men, W. Swassam. I mean, now I know we're doing it, but
that's awesome.
So politically incorrect in today's terms, but I think it showed the anguish of my predicament of being female. And then from there, 1968, I left my little town, Millbrae, by the San Francisco Peninsula, and I drove across the Bay Bridge, and I became a student in Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And in that year, I found the world where I belonged. I was a student in that tumultuous times. And the thing that was really a foundational change, which was something that was burgeoning at that time, was I joined a CR, or consciousness raising group, which was just a group of women sitting around in a circle talking about our experience and what was happening to us, and looking at down to the roots of what was our psychological and social conditions. And I have to say that even at 20, I found truths there that continued to shape me and gave me values for my whole life. And I met a friend recently from that time. She goes, "You still have those values?" And I was, yeah, I do. So something clarified in me at that time.
Yeah.
I can go on.
Well, I was just wondering specifically about goddess spirituality. Was that a thing that was developing in Berkeley at that time? And
yeah, well, let me say that at that time, of course, I feel like I was part of the zeitgeist of the times, part of the second wave of feminism, which was, the liberation movements of the 1960s. And then a group of us women started the first underground feminist newspaper called It Ain't Me, Babe, which came out. Yeah, it came out in January 1970. And it was Sisters Unite to defend our rights. We wanted to be able to take karate lessons at this male gym. But so we were engaged in the social struggle for our liberation. And some women continue to do that, and I bless them. But for some of us, it wasn't enough. There was some kind of something we lacked, and that was images of a female divine. So that's why I call it a feminist spirituality, that we needed something. I mean, there's, insurgent activities in the outer playing fields of life, but we needed some symbol. We needed something else that we were hungry for, that we didn't even know that we needed. But because of what I call the psychic event of our time, which is the return of the goddess. I mean, I think that's the most important thing that happened in the 20th century.
Yes.
Carrying on, I was part of the spirit of that time, and that is part of my life path. So we began to become aware of a history that had been stolen from us. We began to identify with the medieval witches. We called ourselves the Red Witches, and we'd go out and do demonstrations. So
Wow.
the goddess became part of who I am, as, again, just a revelation. As I just feel that she was rising up from the psyche, the natural cycle of the nature of reality. It's cyclical, and she was coming back to really save us all, as if that she had to show us another way for the sheer survival of life. So she started to rise up in me, and of course many other women and men will experience it. Oh, suddenly she was in my poetry, which happened to me, or this goddess imagery. It was just this, and is the spirit of the times. So
yeah, and the source points. I was talking to Ruth Barrett in my last podcast, and she was saying the source points. There's always source points for growth and change and development. And she also spoke of the women's liberation movement as being a big source point, as well as, the Vietnam War.
Yeah, that there were all these, gay liberation and Black rights, and all kinds of things happening, and then women's liberation. So it was the poet Wordsworth wrote about the French Revolution. He said it was bliss to be part of that at that time. He said, but to be young was very heaven. So it was really great to be young at that time.
It's exciting, powerful times.
It was revolutionary times.
Yes, exactly. So is there anybody who might have inspired you, like a teacher or a mentor at that time on your journey?
I would say I had many beloved sisters at that time. Peggy White and Bonnie Eisenberg, the three of us started the newspaper, and we really inspired each other. But I feel, I know one of the questions you asked me before was somebody in particular in my whole life path, and that would be a little later, meeting Maria Gimbutas.
Yes.
But if you're talking to me about them, I would say it was a collective spirit.
Yeah, sounds like it. Your sisters. That's very cool. And with the newspapers and the going out in the streets and being the Red Witches that you were, it all started that journey, it sounds like.
It did, but it was just about being attuned to, again, the zeitgeist or the spirit of the times.
Yeah.
She was arising, again.
Yeah.
She was returning, again, the cyclical nature of reality. She was coming back, as if the psyche, again, just like as a volcano, was exploding in dreams and images and symbols and arts and scholars and artists, that it was just something that had to be.
It was like a renaissance.
Yes, a necessary renaissance. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. That's to me, that's very important, is to understand. I wasn't in that era, but I just I'm in awe of the power of the times, of those revolutionary times, and in the 60s, where everything was changing and it was potent and powerful. And it just, from who I've been speaking with on my podcast, it's a very potent time for the goddess return.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I know that you hosted and produced a wonderful cable TV series called The Goddess in Art. I'm wondering if you could discuss a little bit about that journey and how that began and your interest in goddess art.
Okay, well, again, it was just something I was aligned with
Mm-hmm.
at the time. You know, like now that the Sheilas are coming back, all of a sudden, all more Sheilas are being discovered. None so blind as they who cannot see. But now we started to see, and we started to see her. So it was many people. Then I lived in Berkeley, then I came down to LA. But
Mm-hmm.
many people were interested in the goddess and interested in art, and I surely was. So,
Yeah.
uh, if you're asking me about my TV show, how that started.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering because I mean, I studied art at the San Francisco Art Institute, and
Ah,
I remember taking an art history class, and we were the teacher was discussing Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party,
yes.
and you know, it's a very important piece of work and a movement, a starting of a movement. And I was just curious how the goddess in art appears, what the importance is in art as a movement, and you know how you started to get interested in that movement.
Well, I would like to say that the dinner party is a work of genius,
Yes.
a work of genius. And it's shaped, of course, in the shape of the triangle, which is the quintessential symbol of the vulva. Each of the 39 dinner plates are women in history and prehistory and their vulva. And it's all women's arts of, you know, it's a dinner party, food, it's the weaving and the sculpture, and it was a communal effort too in creating that. Many women took place, and at the time, oh, Bob Dornan, who's this jerky representative down here, he called it a work of pornography, and a lot of men really
Uh,
discussed it, but really just dismissed it. Now it's permanently housed in Brooklyn Museum, Elizabeth Sackler Museum, and uh, so I think that that was really a revolutionary piece, and
yeah.
plus aesthetically it's really beautiful, intellectually it has power, and it has great wisdom,
Yeah.
therefore it's a masterpiece.
Yes, I
So I just
agree.
want to say that aside on that. So in my book I do talk about contemporary artists, and it is something um, different curators were saying that feminist art was one of the great movements, post-war movements in art. So
Mm,
it, again, it was something in the spirit of the times. You know, you had the woman's
yeah.
building emerging, and you had all kinds of. I certainly have artists like that, like Mary Beth Edelstein and
Yeah.
Nancy Spiro, and different artists in my book.
Mhm. Mhm.
So again, if you were attuned to that, and if it was something that your soul needed, it was there. It was there to be for you
Yeah.
to be nourished by.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine was the president of Artist Equity here in Los Angeles, and
Mhm.
he was very immersed in the goddess and in art. And he decided to produce just one TV show through Artist Equity called The Goddess in Contemporary Art.
Mhm.
And the woman who was supposed to moderate it was in a car crash. So he asked me to moderate it.
Oh. Oh.
So it's
Wow.
just fate, you know,
Yes, fate
there's
and
certain things of
destiny.
fate. And, but again, it's responding to a hunger and a need. And
Yeah.
so I had 10 days to prepare. I interviewed local artists. I was terrified. I'd never done a TV show. I was so nervous. You know, the recording is live and then later
Yeah.
it's broadcast. So the only way I could handle my nerves was to tell myself, I'm serving her, I'm serving her, it's an offering. Then when I did it, I realized I could do this myself, and I could just call it the goddess in art. And I could, so I went on to do that for 5 years. The first show
Yeah.
was January 29th, 1986, which was 2 days after the Challenger exploded. And and I did 24 shows, and I was exploring the what I consider, and it's not just an opinion, I've done a lot of research on it, the oldest tradition in art, which is the goddess in art and the basis of spirituality and culture. So I did that, and I interviewed contemporary artists as part of the resurgence of feminist spirituality in contemporary art. And I interviewed Maria Gimbutas and
Yes, I saw that. It was fascinating. And Starhawk as
well. Oh, yeah.
Wow, I was blown away.
I interviewed Starhawk the day after the Berlin Wall fell.
Oh, wow. Powerful.
And so I interviewed scholars like that, or visionary activists like Starhawk and Vicky Noble and different artists. And it was just part of, modern consciousness. And we looked at the egalitarian model of old Europe as a model for our times. And it's been used in university courses. It's at the Getty. And this is something I'll probably say a few times during the course of this. They're all on my website. And I went to your website and I noticed you put mine in stargoody.com, 10 letters Starr Goode. And all those shows are there for free. Everything I'm saying about my website, it's for free. So anybody can go there and go to the website and see these shows. They're all about a half an hour long.
Yeah, I started watching them a few weeks ago in preparation, and I'm just blown away by the amount of genius and brilliance and just the power of the just the discussion was it just brought back a lot of interest in me in myth and spirituality with the goddess, and especially with images. I'm very attuned to imagery and symbol, and how important that is in our culture.
Because I like a good conversation, and I think one-on-one conversations are one of the supreme experiences in this life.
Absolutely.
So, conversations, and of course I have a curiosity, and I would just immerse myself in these people I was so lucky and fascinated to talk to them. So it was a conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Much like what we're having now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was just blown away by that series, and I'm just curious, was it well received? I know it was on cable TV. Was it review? I'm sure you got reviews. And
well, I mean, it was received, but it's really interesting to me, because if you think of 1986, however 30 odd years ago that was, that it has its own life. I think in some ways it's getting more attention now than it did at the time.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think, wow. I mean, sometimes I think, oh, I should be more productive, or I should, doubts and fears, I should be this or that. So it's interesting to me that something I did so long ago has a life.
yeah,
And that people are enjoying it. And it
yeah.
makes me very happy to see those conversations and those fantastic women. I mean, I did interview two men too. See their thoughts and their artwork. And I always had images. The only one I never had was with Starhawk. We just had a conversation because it was the 10th anniversary of a Spiral Dance coming out.
Yeah, yeah. I was really interested in all the interviews, but Rianne Eisler and Starhawk and Maria Gimbutas. These are big foremothers and mothers of the goddess spiritual movement.
Absolutely.
So I just anyway, I really implore everybody to go watch that that series on YouTube with Starr Goode, the goddess in art. And
they're on YouTube. They're also on my website. So I mean, you can
find their website. Yeah,
you can find it any old way.
Yeah. So so as a result of the Goddess in Art TV series, how did you start getting interested in Sheela Na Gig? And how does Sheela Na Gig inspire you?
Well, the Sheilas, to take a breath, around, I don't know, 1985 or so, around the same time when I started the TV show, somebody showed me a picture of a Sheela Na Gig in this kind of classic book by Jorgen Anderson called The Witch on the Wall. And she said, I think you'd be interested in this. And I saw my first Sheela, which is many people's first Sheela, the Kilpeck Sheela. And I took a look at that. I said, this is for me. I think the way I like to do things is I like to fall in love.
Right.
To be in love, and I like to have, that be an inspiration. I mean, who wants to live without being in love? So I fell in love with them, and
Hmm.
I began to immerse myself in those, and I just began studying them. And in that book, there was a map from 1935, and I go to Ireland and the British Isles, Scotland, Wales,
Yes.
and England, and I started just being on the trail of the Sheilas, and I started looking at them, and I just became so fascinated with them that they had this incredible power. To me, their beauty is so singular, and they had this power. And what are they? What are they
Yeah.
doing on these churches exposing their vulva? Medieval Christian churches, exposing their vulva. What are they doing there?
Yeah.
How can she be there?
Yeah.
And
What's the purpose?
yeah, why are they there? So I just became mesmerized, and I just began my journey with them. And so that's how it started, with someone just showing me a picture of her.
Yeah.
Uh, to me, this is an image. This is an image that women need. Why We Need the Goddess, that great article published so many years ago by the late great Carol Christ, Why We Need the Goddess, because cosmological images legitimize political systems. So that's why, in some ways for us, a God won't do. We need the goddess. We need an image like the Sheela Na Gig, which can tell us to overthrow some dour war god and say, look, here's a great creatrix. Here's an image of a female who has complete dominion over her body. She's not an ordinary woman. She's an extraordinary supernatural woman. She has powers over life and death and birth and renewal, and she's a goddess. And so just to see her imaged, without any interpretation. And you were talking about images, and I completely concur with you. An image can penetrate our bodies and penetrate our psyches, so that it's impacting us no matter what projective interpretations we put on her. So just to look at the image of a Sheela Na Gig is liberating. And it's
Yeah.
something women need. And I think that, to me, I call her the antidote to the longest war, which is the war on women. And,
Awesome. Thank
and
you. Thank you for saying that.
well, yeah.
True.
And that it leads to the war on nature. And something else I take up in my book is the war on the imagination. We need symbols, we
Right.
need images to completely align or realign our consciousness. And she is an extraordinary imaginative image that comes from the depths of the psyche, and a combination of inner and outer worlds. I mean, she has a vulva. We've seen vulvas before, but nobody looks like a Sheela. So she is a liberating, subversive image that asserts the sanctity of the female body.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I look at her, I think it of birth and death. It all starts there and ends there.
Absolutely. She has a capacious vulva. I mean, you can't be a Sheela unless you're exposing your vulva. And
Right.
it's just a little vulva. It's too messy and it's ripe. And she's pulling her labia apart with her hands in a bold manner. Can't miss it. So, I mean, that's, the entrance to sex. That's the birth canal coming out. I mean,
Yeah.
she's a gateway to these mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's that, but she's in the dried up body of a hag, sometimes with the skull of death. So she's
Yeah.
an antinomy. She has the opposites in her body, and which is
Hmm.
part of her power. And Maria
Hmm.
Gimbutas said, the great archaeologist, said that in old Europe, the civilization before patriarchal culture, the
Mm-hmm.
goddess culture in Europe, that the life giver and death wielder were one entity. So the Sheilas are part of the continued thread
Mm-hmm.
of the goddess.
Yeah.
We see her as a life giver and death wielder. So she's, I think she's just what we need, Bridget.
Yeah. I agree. She's a symbol of creation and destruction in a very primal, potent image, and also very sovereign.
Yes, she is a goddess of sovereignty. And I write about in my book, she has connections to the Celtic goddess of sovereignty. And that's the thing. She has autonomy and sovereignty and integrity. She belongs to herself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just curious, when you went to some of the, the churches, cathedrals, holy wells in your research of this book. By the way, the book is called Sheela Na Gig, The Dark Goddess of Sacred Power, that we're discussing. I'm wondering, when you went to Ireland and Scotland, England to do your research, did you what was your feeling when you approached Sheela Na Gig, like say at a holy well? What was your was there a presence? Was there a feeling that you came through? I'm just
Oh, absolutely. You know, my book has three parts. The first part is the history, which is tracing the Sheila's roots back to the Paleolithic vulvas.
yes.
And the last part is imagery, which is talking about the archetype of sacred display of the vulva cross-culturally and throughout time. But the middle part is called Journeys, which I do these more lyrical descriptions of what it was like for me to be on the trail of the Sheilas. I mean, it could take a whole day to find a Sheela. I felt like a pilgrim searching for a
Yeah,
trail.
absolutely.
And, and I was just using an old map from the 30s. It was very hard to find these
Wow.
things.
Wow.
Now, my colleague Jack Roberts has maps, and you can Google Jack Roberts, and he has more, contemporary maps. So it was a real pilgrimage, and to find them. And of course, it's so beautiful there. It's so green and all the
Yes.
stones. And Ireland has Neolithic artifacts. I mean, Sheilas are medieval figures, but they have deep roots to going back to the beginnings of culture. So I mean, it's very atmospheric to be there. And as you said, holy wells, and so it was an adventure.
Yeah.
Adventure, and I had adventures and misadventures. Look, there's a bull over there in this field. Um, but I felt protected because I was on a blessed mission.
Yes, a
So
sacred journey.
yes, so yes, to find her and see her. I mean, the first Sheila I ever saw was the Killinaboy Sheila in County Clare, the first Sheila that I ever saw in person. I start my book with that. That to actually see her among the green and the stones, to meet her for the first time, to see her there, and she's over the entrance of the church. And Sheilas are often over portals. The portal of the vulva.
Yeah.
She's often by windows or
Yeah.
doors. So
It's like they're protecting.
absolutely. So the vulva has many powers, and there's no end. There's no last word on what those powers are, because they're mysteries, and a symbol can never be fully explained because
Right.
it connects to
That's right.
the unconscious. But
Right.
to
Yeah.
me, all the powers she has are connected to the power of the female sex. And to me, her greatest power is that of apotropeia, or protection. She is protective. She guards over all of life. She guards over the entrances, exits of castles. I mean, of course, the vulva is an entrance, a site of entrance and exit. And it's liminal, because the vulva is the site of a border between inner and outer. So there
Right.
is something as, again, a gateway to the divine. So I
Ah,
think
yes.
greatest power is that to protect life.
Absolutely. And were there birthing stones?
Well, some Sheilas, Barbara Freitag writes a lot about this in her book, The Enigma of Sheilas, that women, and also there's folk traditions. There's a lot of folk traditions. Whatever the original meanings of the Sheilas are, who knows? We only have the image. Of
Yeah.
course, that's enough.
Yeah.
But in the 19th century, there's writings from the antiquarians, the early archaeologists who started to catalog in the 19th century. They went out in Ireland and started cataloging all these medieval artifacts, and that there's a lot of traditions of women calling upon the Sheilas and going to the stones in their hour of need when they were
Yeah.
giving birth. So there's a lot of connections,
Yeah.
folk traditions of the Sheilas helping women with birth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was looking at that in your book as some of the birthing stones and just the different depictions of her, and I go with my intuitive feeling when
Mm,
I see images, and I felt power, and I felt destruction, and I felt life. And
yes.
what's more important? What's more primal than that?
There's nothing more permanent. And that's the thing. These are not Renaissance angels, much as I might like, you know, some Botticelli. I love the Venus and I love beauty, but um, these are primal. The
Yeah,
Sheilas are really, what I think you said, earthy and grounded. And the Sheilas have these very primal, we could say primitive, but what is that? That means it's primal. It's connected to these deep sources of our instincts, as you said. And that's part of their power. That's really part of their power.
yeah. And well, for me, that's part of being a Wiccan, is the intuitive power of images and chant and energies.
Yes, and that's why we need these images. That's why we need the imagination, because I'm all for reason, I'm all for science, but the nature of reality cannot be explained by cause and effect. We
Right.
need symbolic thinking. And to do away with the arts in school is a crime against our nature. And that's why I was calling it the war on the imagination. And
Yeah.
this guy, Steven Pinker, and all this rationality, rationality. It's so dry and desiccated. I mean, I'm for being reasonable sometimes, but we need our imagination. And without our instincts, how can we guide us? How can we
Right.
guide ourselves?
And how can we be part of the cycle of life if we don't understand the mysteries? If we don't even try to understand the mystery?
Exactly. I mean, to me, it's so, so misguided, and it's suicidal. It's suicidal because without these connections to life, maybe it's just easier to destroy everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we need, it's part of who we are. And to me, one of the most basic ways that human beings understand reality is through symbols, through
Yes.
connections. Symbols are bridges to energies that are greater than ourselves. And we
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're bombarded with images on the internet and, Facebook and, you know, constant social media and TV. And it's just a, constant amount of images, but they're meaningless. They feel meaningless and you just want more and more. But are they really important? No, I mean, some of them are maybe,
Somebody,
but
somebody once said you can never have enough of what you don't need.
yeah,
But the thing is, those kinds of images are superficial. They're not sacred. They don't
right,
function in the traditional way of images, which is, again, a bridge between this world and the
right.
beyond world, this
Yeah,
world and what we don't know. And that's how life is infinite and rich, is,
right.
is that connection. So again, the war on the imagination. And it's so lethal.
It
We
is.
can't survive as a species without our imagination.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I just, technology can only go so far.
Yeah, I mean, good for technology. I like my electric toothbrush, but it's it has to be in
Right.
service of something sacred. It's
Something
a machine
sacred.
isn't an end of itself. It's a servant to something greater.
Yeah, I agree. So, I was just curious, if you had gone to any of the cave art, Paleolithic or Neolithic caves in France or Spain to see some of those goddess.
Well, I haven't, only in my dreams. And it was one of the gifts of this book when I was doing it. And of course, it's when I was finally writing it after all these decades. The journey of it was became mesmerized by the Paleolithic caves. And one of the
Yes.
dominant motifs, of course, is the vulva. And so, that is something on my bucket list. I really want to go to the caves. And when was the pandemic? The summer of 2020. I was going to go to Glastonbury to talk at the Goddess Conference, and
Oh, wow.
I was lining up. Of course, it didn't happen. It had to all happen on Zoom because of the pandemic that year,
Yeah.
2020.
Mm.
And I had asked my goddess um, connections. What do you know about the caves? I mean, I don't want to go on some tour of the Paleolithic caves and walk in and hear some man tell me this is all about hunting magic.
Right, right.
I'm in the womb of the goddess. No, I don't want to hear. Anyway, I found this woman and I wrote to her, and her name's Christine, I forget her last name, DeWong, and she wrote a book on the caves. And I wrote to her and I wanted to go and have her take me around. And so we were setting it up.
Oh, wow.
And
That sounds
then,
really cool.
later I can send you her name and her book.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I mean, again, it was connected, and these people from, actually, I don't know if you know Mary Condren, but anyway, this woman in Ireland connected me to Christine, French woman. So I don't know if it's next summer or when, but that's something I really, really want. Because to me, the caves are like the dawn of the human spirit. Yes, there were symbols before that. Of course, we can look at the Bahram, 250,000 years ago, just a figure of a woman with a vulva. But in terms of organized symbol systems, see, I can see you're a symbol person. In terms of, concentrated galleries of art, the Paleolithic caves, and all those animals.
And the animals, yeah.
They all come from her. She is the mother of all of that.
Yeah.
So, I really want to go to the caves, and I know eventually I will. But just seeing and discovering the motif of the vulva it was a basic iconography, the most enduring image of creativity. And it was really, I mean, even these great scholars like Alexander Marshak in The Roots of Civilization and André Lecourant, the great French archaeologist, I mean, they all acknowledge the feminine nature of the caves, and that this was a story around these goddesses and these abstract images of the vulva, the downward pointing triangle, the iconography of that was something that said that was a story known by everyone in the culture.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's quite mesmerizing. And
I studied painting, got my degree in painting at the San Francisco Art Institute. And one of the journeys I went on as a visual artist was to look at Lascaux and some of the cave art. And I started doing texturized paintings with concrete and dried pigments in that style. And so I was looking at a lot of cave art at that time, and just really aligning with the imagery and the texture and the feeling of being in a cave in itself is like being in a womb. And the ritual of going down into the earth is it sounds like to me it is a birth.
Yes, and certainly it was a place of ceremony. And I think when you read my stuff in my book, this woman, Judith Thurman of the New Yorker, wrote about, she'd got to go into the Chauvet cave, which most people, I don't know if they know or not know, but it was discovered around 1990. Werner Herzog did a great documentary, Cave of Forgotten Dreams, and he got to go in there. And that's how I first saw the vulva in the back of the cave there. That the traditions, okay, and this is dating now, maybe they change it, but maybe 40,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago. And Lascaux is about 17,000 years ago. So, but the traditions and styles of the painting are relatively the same. So for these traditions to have lasted 5 times as long as recorded history, how deeply satisfying it must have been to the people who did it.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to do that to eat, but it was a spiritual need, to do that. And certainly when you're in the caves, it's what else could it be but a place of ceremony?
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like to me that's what they were doing. I mean, it's conjecture at this point. We don't know, but we can just the feeling I get, and just looking.
Well, we can make our best guess, and we don't have to look at interpretations that have patriarchal bias that say, oh, look, that's an arrow. No, it's a plant sprouting from her vulva, a motif that goes all the way through the Neolithic, so. And that men painted all of that. Well, most of the hands are, this was in National Geographic, hardly a feminist publication, that because of the relative size of the fingers, it seems like most of the hands were female hands, when they do the hand.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
See?
Yeah. Well, I know Max Dashu writes a lot about iconography, feminine art, and the beginnings of feminine goddess
Sure.
history. And I'd love to have her on my show also.
I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, it's just a wealth of symbol and imagery, and it's so relevant now, and it was suppressed for so long, thousands of years. So
well, yeah, I mean, and that's her phrase of suppressed history, and that's what it is, and that's
yeah,
suppressed history. And when I was going through and with the Sheilas, and the Sheilas are a descendant of all of this. She is the continuing thread of the civilization of the goddess and the culture of the goddess because of her powers of the vulva. And if the Shelby Caves is 40,000 years ago and Sheila's are 400 years ago, I mean, she is a modern figure. And
yeah,
that's sort of so astonishing is that all the powers of the vulva are shown in her. When we look at her iconography, when we read some of the folklore traditions about it, or and study and again go to the sites, that through her we can see the many powers of the vulva, of healing, of life and death, of helping with birth, guarding over the dead. Many Sheilas look over graveyards. Many Sheilas have skulls of death. So in my book, I trace back, I go back to its medieval culture. I go back to Celtic culture, goddesses of sovereignty we were talking about.
yeah.
And I go back to classical figures like Gorgons and Balbo, who are powers of the vulva.
Mm-hmm.
Then go back to the Neolithic frog goddess, and then to the Paleolithic caves. So she is a thread going all the way back to the powers of the goddess. So that's why she's such a fantastic figure, because she embodies all of that. And of course, with the return of the goddess, we have the return of the Sheela, this modern flowering of her, people writing books like me, or an artist taking her up, and words like pussy and vulva, pink pussy hats. I loved when the pink pussy hats were on time.
I know.
And vagina, the vagina monologues, these words are coming back into the culture, and we're reclaiming them as our mother tongue.
Yes, absolutely. The vulva is a symbol of divine feminine, but also our own femininity and the power that we have as, overthrowing the patriarchy.
Well, backstage, you had asked me about the importance of the vulva symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just want to sum it up with the phrase, the icon of the vulva, a basis of civilization. Let me say it again, the icon of the vulva, a basis of civilization. Once again, dear listeners, this is an article I just wrote, and it's on my website, and it was just published in the Journal of Archaeomythology. It's a blast to read.
Yeah, I've read it.
Yeah, it's fun. And I have 90 color images because like for my book, the images back up the text.
Yeah.
I want the reader to have the experience of that. Yeah. And I just want that to be a meme to enter the culture. Guess what, guys? The vulva can be a basis of civilization.
Vulva is the basis of civilization.
The icon, and that I could just say that all day long. That for women to know,
and to feel and feel
and know that, I mean, I'm really happy, of course, that people are always sending me things. There was a reference to Sheela Na Gig's in Doonesbury a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, and just a lot of artists. I could go on and on, but a lot of artists. But so I'm happy that these things are entering the culture, but women need to know that they have been robbed of an immense history, and that they need a symbol, that we have a symbol of this immense history, because the quintessential image of the goddess and her powers is the vulva. The downward pointing triangle is a glyph, but that women need to have that restored to them. So I hope that my book came out at just the right time to offer evidence in the zeitgeist of these times for us to know this is the primal image of creative power, of our creative power, and for women to know that they have that piece, just to know the immense history and power of the goddess, and that belongs to all of us. That is our natural heritage.
It is our heritage. I agree.
And I just want women to know that. I mean, everybody.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think you're yelling at the top of the mountain, and I am right there with you.
Okay.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me to my next question is, what are some of your upcoming plans for the future? Do you have any workshops or events or new books?
Well, I'm going to be working on this documentary about Maria Gimbutas.
Oh, good.
I hope your listeners know who she is. So I have that coming up. And then I have, again, those plans. I'm studying right now about the Paleolithic caves. That's really on my list. And also I'm a poet, and I'm working on a villanelle. My best friend since I was 10 years old just died. So I'm working on a villanelle for her, and very desolate about that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I'm doing.
Yeah. Is the documentary going to be aired on TV?
I don't know. It's a Lithuanian woman.
Okay.
Who approached me and other people. And I think that she has some good ideas. And of course, Maria, one of the great figures of the 20th century, who overturned all knowledge to give us the goddess and went against entrenched patriarchal institutions to bring the goddess back. And
her imagery and her art, the artifacts that back up the matriarchy and how powerful the matriarchal culture was.
Yeah, and to say, look, whenever I hear things, it just kind of drives me nuts about men talking, some unenlightened men talking about history or how things were. Well, one of the things Maria showed us was that there was a time and there were cultures that lived in peace.
Okay? Yes.
And that
in conjunction with nature.
Aligned with nature, and had this beautiful art. And what is a civilization? Of course, I took that up in that article. Not androcratic warrior cultures. I mean, patriarchy is a very unstable, violent culture. Everything's overturned, and wars. But there were times that people lived in peace and had non-material values, a quality of life, lived creatively, and had a harmony and equality between the sexes. I mean, that's my idea of a civilization.
Yeah, and it has purpose and a spirituality and a sense of the sacred and creativity
and beauty. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's the culture I would like to live in.
Yeah.
So lastly, do you have a website? Maybe you could just spell out your website or your other social media where people can learn more about you, or if you have a newsletter.
Well, my main thing is my website, and that's 10 letters, Starr Goode, StarrGoode. So on that website, you can read that article of the icon of the vulva, basis of civilization. You can see all my TV shows. And also, we didn't talk too much about Maria, but there's a great documentary about Maria. Years ago, I produced a book event, for the Civilization of the Goddess, the world premiere, and there's a documentary on that.
Oh,
and
yeah. Okay.
Really urge people, there's a full audio recording of Maria's talk that she gave, which she considered the best talk she ever gave. So I'm just saying on my website, and it's all free, kids. A lot of stuff for people to go through, and of course stuff on the Sheelas and lots of images and reviews and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today and learning about your journey and the Sheelas and the vulva as the basis of civilization. And you obviously have so much offerings to the goddess and to society and to women. So I just thank you for all you have done and all you do, Starr.
Well, thank you, Bridget. And you're welcome. No, I should say you're welcome.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just going to sign off here, and blessed be.
Blessed be to you and all that you do, Bridget.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.